love lives here.
So I get to introduce our guest speaker. Not so much a guest, he's kind of homegrown to the Inland Empire. He was reminding me this morning that he has been a member of quite a few CSLs in the area. He started out in Redlands, then moved here to Riverside. He took some of his early certificated classes here, probably the youngest student I ever had in foundations and something else, I don't know. But it was treatment and meditation, yes, how could I forget? And I could tell from just that interaction that I had, he really was a special spiritual being, and he's grown into that even more. He went on to Greater Las Vegas to do his practitioner studies, and then circled back to the Beaumont Center, and then back here. He's been a practitioner for 9 years, and he is a 5th-year ministerial student, so he is our ministerial intern here. And his daily thing is teaching 4th grade. So how awesome is it to have the CSL consciousness with 4th graders? And he's been just a real trooper through the pandemic, and just I have such respect for all that he does and all that he is. And so we get to just give him a big round of applause.
Oh, I could listen to that introduction all day. It's hard to believe that almost 22 years ago, I walked into my first Center for Spiritual Living, and I ended up here. So this is definitely coming full circle and family for me. It's hard to believe I've been doing this for 20 years. So good morning again. I just want to mention and be really thankful for my partner in crime, Miss Allison over here. And I also want to be really thankful for our music. Aren't they great? Riverside Center for Spiritual Living definitely has the best music of any CSL in the Inland Empire. So let's give them a big round of applause. So Center for Spiritual Living Worldwide has the yearly theme this year of living everyday wonder. And I've really enjoyed that theme because it talks about applying our spiritual teaching, our spiritual principles to everyday life. Not just the abstract big things, but the little things. So this month we've been talking about creativity, and today I want to talk to you about going boldly. Now, for those of you that know me, know how excited I got when I saw this title, because I am a huge Star Trek fan. And Star Trek is all about going boldly into the unknown, right? I'm that kind of nerd. So you might not know this, unless you're a Star Trek nerd like me, but Star Trek actually has a holiday in the month of April. It is called First Contact Day. And in the universe of Star Trek, it is the day in April 5th, 2063, when humanity first meets aliens for the first time. So it's kind of the high holiday of Star Trek. And recently in Ministerial school, I got to write a paper. I've been taking this class about mythology and cosmology. And I got to write a 10-page paper examining how Star Trek is like mythology. So if that's not a big enough reason for me to go to ministerial school, I don't know what is. So space, we can talk about Star Trek, we talk about space being that final frontier, that never-ending challenge of infinite space, of exploration, of meeting the unknown, of expanding our knowledge. But despite what Jeff Bezos and Elon Musk would have you think, we're not quite ready to warp out of our solar system. I'm afraid we're still a little bit away from that. A couple of years, 2063, right? But the good news is we may not be able to go to outer space, but we can go to the inner space. The inner space. And the challenge remains the same. We get to explore what it means to be living expressions of the divine. We get to explore who we are as unique expressions of God. We get to increase our knowledge and increase our self-knowledge. We get to meet the unknown, and it's just as infinite and just as adventurous and just as beautiful. And there's no better topic for doing this than creativity. Because the truth is, no matter what you've been told in your life, you are a creative being. We are all constantly recreating and co-creating our lives. We can't help it. It's our nature. Sometimes we create with intention. We are the sculptor. We have intention and we shape the clay that is our life. We do that through the spiritual tool of affirmative prayer, consciously and intentionally co-creating our life. And then there are times in our life when we are the clay. The spiritual practice there is visioning. We allow the universe, or that intuitive sense, to speak in and through and as us. That still small voice, we allow it to speak through us and to us, and we allow it to shape the clay that is our life. We have this divine dance. We are the creator and the beholder, the creator and the beholder, and we go back and forth. But both of these ways of being are just as important. And when they come together in this beautiful and divine dance, it creates the masterpiece that is your life. Because the truth is, your life is a beautiful masterpiece unfolding. In this faith and the philosophy, this way of life that we call science of minds, we believe that anytime that you are creating something, whether it is consciously or unconsciously, you are reenacting, you are using that same creative principle that created everything in the universe. All those planets, entire galaxies, every flower, every atom came from one thing, that thing that which we call God. And anytime it is our privilege, it is our honor to recreate that creative process in our life. You are the universe creating itself anew every day. You are the universe knowing itself as infinite diversity and infinite combinations. You are creating in this moment what the next moment of your life will be. Every moment. In this moment, you are creating what your life will be in the next moment. And the good news is that principle is never bound by precedent. It doesn't matter what has happened up until this point. Every moment of this now is a new moment for you to create something new. In fact, our founder, Ernest Holmes, talks a lot about what happens with this creative energy. He says that we are like conduits, we are like pipelines for that divine and creative energy to flow in and through and as us. And when that creative energy gets blocked, it has to go somewhere. It's kind of like the hose in your garden. You ever turned it on and it does that thing and it gets in that pinch and the hose shuts off? Right? That water's gonna go somewhere eventually. If you don't fix that knot, if you don't unwind that blockage, you're going to have a mess on your hands. When that flow is blocked, that energy builds up and it seeks any avenue for expression. And sometimes that means it shows up in our bodies, it shows up in our relationships, it shows up in our life in unhealthy ways, unskillful ways, because that energy has to go somewhere. Our job then, according to Ernest Holmes, is to keep that conduit, keep that pipeline as clear as possible and remove anything that is a block to the creative flow of our life. What is in the way? We all have lots of knots. Maybe you recognize some of these. I'm not good enough. I'm not an artist. I'm not going to have time. I'm not as good as that person is. And if we let those knots control our creative life, our life becomes a tangled mess of knots. We have too many knots. Sometimes they were given to us at a young age. Sometimes we gave them to ourselves. But part of that unblocking that creative energy in our life is untangling and undoing those knots. What are the knots in your life? What knots do you have that are blocking that flow of creative energy in your life? The best way to untie those knots in your life is by doing two things. Number one, practice being creative. Number two, be curious. Practice being creative and be curious. Because what I know is that we all have a divine urge to create. We are all the divine made manifest, and the impulse of life is to create more life, more complicated, more diverse, more infinitely diverse life. Life is always trying to express life. And because you are a manifestation, a reflection of that divine idea, I know that you have that urge too. So I know that when we start to clean out those divine and creative pipes, that energy starts to flow. It can feel a little awkward sometimes. It can feel a little vulnerable. Sometimes it doesn't feel very comfortable, but I know that the more we do it, the easier it gets. You might even find that once you get that creative energy flowing, that it does some untangling of your life. Those knots get untangled. My fourth graders are always telling me, oh, I'm not good at that. I can't do that. And my favorite, this is hard. And I tell them two things. Number one, if you're not making mistakes, you're not learning anything. You don't learn anything by doing it right. You already know how to do it. You only learn when you make a mistake and you learn from that mistake. And they're very used to me saying this. I say, well, you know how to do that, better and to get better at something? And they look at me and say, practice. We often grow up hearing this phrase, practice makes perfect. And we think somehow that gets mistranslated into our lives. We think that that means that if I can't do it perfectly, what's the point? But the truth is that the practice itself is the point. The practice that we do is perfect. Whether you are writing or gardening or meditating or playing the piano, practice is the point. And it is perfect just the way that it is. It is not practice makes perfect. It is my practice is perfect. Just the way that it needs to be. And here I get to stand up here and be in practice with you this morning. There is one powerful word that can untangle all of the knots in your life. Are you ready? It's kind of like the ish that we had a couple weeks ago. The magic word is yet. Yet. I may not be able to meditate for an hour yet. I can't bake bread yet. I cannot paint a picture or play the piano yet. But when I say that word yet, it leaves open that infinite possibility that maybe tomorrow I might feel like learning how to play the piano. I can't do it yet. You see, an essential aspect of creativity is not being afraid to fail. Scientists came up with this great invention. They called all of their activities hypotheses and experiments. So when something didn't work out, they didn't say, I failed. They said, oh, well, that didn't work. And they try something else. But somehow we think we're different. We think, oh, I did that one time and it didn't work, so I'm never doing it again. I did a drawing when I was a kid, and someone told me it was ugly, so I never drew again. Okay, you're not a kid anymore. You may not know how to do it yet, but that doesn't mean that tomorrow you won't be able to. Principle's not bound by precedent. So these scientists made it permissible to fail repeatedly until in the end, they got what they wanted. Is there something that you are passionate about? Something that you feel called to do, even if you don't think you do it perfectly yet? Think of it as a hypothesis or an experiment, because the good news is, if it doesn't work out, you're allowed to say, well, that was creative, and try again. See, that has meaning for me because I had this really bad habit, and I realized I had this really bad habit of saying, well, that was dumb when I messed up on something. And I would say, well, that was dumb. And I got called out on it by a practitioner one time. I think it was during practitioner training. And so I came up with this new saying. I said, every time I do something that doesn't quite work out the way it's supposed to, I say, well, that was creative. I had one of those moments this morning as I was driving here. I reached down to grab my cup of coffee, and I grabbed it wrong, and the lid came off. And it started to spill in the middle of the 215 freeway. And I thought, well, that was creative. When we think of life as a hypothesis, when we think about life as an experiment, it frees us up to make life an adventure. Even William Shatner, who portrayed Captain Kirk in the original Star Trek, went boldly into space at the age of 90, aboard Jeff Bezos' spaceship, the Blue Origin. And he said, I've heard about space for a long time. What a miracle it is to see it for myself. But just as those astronauts, just as those people have to leave the bonds and the gravity of Earth, we have to be willing to leave the circle of our comfort zone. Jeannie talked brilliantly about this morning. We have this circle around us called our comfort zone. It is our zone of competence. It's where we feel like we can do things without ever making a mistake. But how boring does that get? In order to step out of that circle, we step into the bigger circle that is just outside our comfort zone, called the circle of our excellence. But we have to be willing to move past our comfort zone. And here's a little secret about life. If you don't occasionally push back your comfort zone, it starts to shrink. Every once in a while, just for the fun of it, you have to push back your comfort zone. Because if you don't, it starts to get smaller and smaller and smaller. Does this take courage? Yes. But every time we take a step into the unknown, I know that the next step appears. If there's anything I've learned from watching Star Trek and reading Star Trek for the last, too many years. Never mind, I'm not going there. Is that we live in a universe of infinite potential. When we are in the creative flow, whether we are painting or baking bread or visioning for our next job, the universe is for us. It is seeking to express love through us. It is silently, and sometimes not so silently, cheering you on. And whenever you are creating that which it is that you feel passionate about, when you're in that moment of love, however you express it, you are living your life on purpose. And if it's not on purpose, you say, well, that was creative. I didn't do that on purpose. So how do you know what it is that you're passionate about? What's this spark of divine life that's in you that's seeking to express? I have some questions for you. Are you ready?
Yeah.
What do you naturally do that you love and you always think about doing? Now, here's a caveat. A lot of times our passion isn't what we do for our paycheck, and that's okay. Maybe you love being outdoors. Maybe you can't get enough of reading or learning new things or watching airplanes fly or growing roses or going and looking for antiques. What is it that you do naturally that you think about doing all the time? That's the creative spark. Question 2. Where do you lose yourself in an experience? What causes you to lose track of time? Maybe it's playing with your grandchildren. Maybe it's fixing wobbly chair legs. Maybe it's going to the kitchen and creating something from nothing. Question 3. Where are you the most at home in your own skin? Maybe it's building a car or baking bread or skiing or hiking or fishing or knitting or learning about Italy or traveling to Italy. Last question. What is the one thing that makes your heart sing more than anything else in the world? Maybe it is singing. It might be visiting museums. Maybe it's doing social justice work or LGBTQ plus activism or feeding the unhomed or volunteering at an animal shelter. Whatever you feel these things, whenever you feel that divine urge to express, you're in the flow. You're in the flow of creativity and you're in the flow of love. Deepak Chopra, in his book, The 7 Spiritual Laws of Success, says this: relinquish your attachment to the known. Step into the unknown, and you will step into the field of all possibilities. You will have excitement, adventure, mystery. You will experience the fun of life, the magic, the celebration, the exhilaration, and the exaltation of your own spirit. So this week, your spiritual tool is to go boldly. Watch an episode of Star Trek. No, I'm just kidding. Be open to the creative energy that is seeking to express itself through you. Look for opportunities to be creative, to step out of your comfort zone. If you're already a pretty creative person, try creating with something you've never used before. Create something new that you've never tried before. Be curious and trust the process. Mark Twain said, 20 years from now, you will be more disappointed by the things that you didn't do than the things you did do. And whether that means you're going to outer space or you're going to that inner space, I know that when you go boldly, you will live long and prosper. And so it is. Thank you. I'm going to invite our practitioners and board members to join me in the consciousness of prayer this morning. It is in that atmosphere of prayer which we meet the divine flow. We meet the divine love. We meet that place and space within each one of us that is infinite potential. I know that God itself, that divine energy, that divine intelligence, that divine order, balance, peace, and wisdom is itself infinite potential. It is unlimited by space, by time. It is that energy, it is that consciousness which we call God, and it is all that there is. I know that I am one with it, that I live and move and have my being from in that space, and I know that for and about every single person this morning within the sound of my voice, whether it is here in person or online. I know that that divine energy is right where you are, expressing itself creatively through your life right now. And so I speak my word for myself. I speak my word for this community. I speak my word for every person online, knowing that that creative energy is showing up and making itself known to you this week. Right here in this moment, I know that we are creating the life that we are going to live in the next moments. And I know and I claim that whatever it feels like we might be lacking in this moment, it is present right here and right now because God is present. Wherever there is a need of wholeness or balance or peace or wisdom, I know that it is right where you are because God is right where you are. And so knowing that is true, I know that we just simply step into this zone of excellence. We step into that creative power. We step into that place and space where we go boldly in our lives out into the world to express the love which we are here to express that divine spark, that divine energy that we are here to express. I simply give thanks for this truth, for this spiritual community, and for this teaching that says that I am a creative being, that I can consciously co-create and dance with life. And so I release this word into the law, knowing that that law reflects back to it everything that has been placed into it, and in great joy, I simply say, and so it is.
Love